Hey friends! My name is Desiree, aka Mama Friendly, and I do all sorts of videos on my channel. I do cooking videos, vlogs, hauls, all sorts of Disney themed content, a little bit of everything. So if any of that sounds like fun to you, I hope you'll subscribe and join me on my YouTube adventure. This year I was hoping to share a bunch of cookie recipes leading up to the holidays, and so I'm calling this 12 Days of Cookies. Kind of a twist on my 12 Days of Vlogmas series that I did last year. I'll post that playlist up here. But this time I'm interspersing 12 different cookie recipes throughout Vlogmas, which is also going to be made up of, you guessed it, vlogs, but also hauls and other little bits and pieces that I'm putting together to try to make up a more complete Vlogmas. I'm not saying I'm gonna do all 25 days, but here's hoping that this gets me at least halfway there, right? If you're on my channel, you already know I eat gluten and dairy free exclusively, and as such, most of my recipes are gluten and dairy free. In fact, I think it's been years since I've shared a not gluten or dairy free recipe on this channel. And I always enjoy the recipes that I share on here. I wouldn't share a recipe if I didn't love it. And if I don't love it, I make sure to let you know that, and I let you know why as well, so you can make any changes you might need to. But the biggest praise, the highest praise that I can expect for my food is when somebody that does not eat gluten and dairy free really enjoys it in spite of the allergy friendly adjustments I might have to make. And this recipe definitely fit that bill. Alright pals, today's cookie is going to be a gluten-free funfetti cookie. Now obviously you can switch out your sprinkles for any color that makes sense for whatever holiday or event you're celebrating, but I just wanted to do straight up funfetti, so I'm going to be using rainbow sprinkles today. And this brand of sprinkle, I'm going to have this particular bottle linked down below. I found this brand online and they are soy-free, gluten-free, dairy-free, etc. It's really hard to find, in particular, soy-free sprinkles. Most brands have soy in them. So if you're somebody that avoids soy, these are going to be great. And they do come in all sorts of varieties. We've got background noise as usual because kiddo's hanging out doing his thing. So let's try to focus right here, shall we? For our ingredients today, we're going to need 2 cups or 300 grams of a 1-to-1 gluten-free flour. This is my favorite kind, so this is what I'm going to be using. We need 1.5 teaspoons of baking powder, a 1/2 teaspoon of salt, 12 tablespoons or 170 grams of butter that's been softened. So I'm using Miyoko's brand butter because it's a vegan butter and I really like baking with it. You need approximately 1.5 sticks if you're using regular butter. This comes in kind of like bigger bricks. That's not the typical sizing metric. So I'm going to measure out the 170 grams that I need, and I have had this on the counter softening just at room temperature for about 1.5 hours now. 1.5 cups or 300 grams of regular white granulated sugar, 1 egg, 2 teaspoons of vanilla, 2 tablespoons of buttermilk, or since we're doing dairy free, we're going to use unsweetened almond milk. You guys already know this is my favorite thing to bake and cook with, so this is what I'm going to be using today. And 1/2 cup of sprinkles plus more for topping. This I don't think is a full 1/2 cup. No, this is only 3 ounces. So I'm going to use most of it and probably leave just a little bit at the end to sprinkle on top of the cookies. But you might want a couple packages of this if you want a little more bang for your funfetti buck. I'm not going to preheat my oven just yet because these cookies do need some time to chill before we bake them. So I'm going to put together the dough now, scoop it out into our cookie shapes, and then I'm going to place the dough balls in my fridge for 2 hours before I bring them back out for baking. So just keep that in mind, that if you're going to make these cookies, they're not like 0 to cookie in 30 minutes. This is not that kind of a recipe. They're very quick to put together, they're very quick to bake, but you are going to need some chill time in between. So you are going to need 2 bowls for this, and you're also going to want a hand mixer or a stand mixer. You don't have to use either, you could just whisk by hand. It's going to be faster and easier to do it electrically. or electronically. You know what I mean. But we're starting out with our first bowl here, and I do have a food scale underneath it because I am measuring my ingredients. So in this first bowl, I'm going to put together my 300 grams or 2 cups of flour. So I got to 240. What was left of that bag. I'm going to open this other one now to finish off my 300. That'll do it, 300 exactly. I'm also going to add my salt. This is a little loud, so I'm going to cut the sound. And my baking powder, of which we need 1.5 teaspoons. So there's the half. And there's the teaspoon. So we're just going to give this a slight little mix and set it aside. Now in another bowl, so I'm tearing out the scale here so that we're starting at 0 grams again. In this bowl, you're going to put everything else basically. So this would be the bowl that you're using with your stand mixer or the bowl that you want to use with your hand mixer. I'm going to try to do it by hand. If it turns out to be too difficult, then I'll switch to my hand mixer. But I just want to see if it can be done and how long it'll take. So in this bowl, I'm going to put my butter. And I did need 170 grams. So let's make sure that's what I've got. There's 68 to start. And 185. So actually I'm going to take a little bit of this out of here. And this is why I wanted to do the butter first. Because I had a feeling I was going to have to take some out and I didn't want it covered in other stuff when I did it. That leaves me at 171. I'm satisfied with that. I'm not going to keep messing with it. So, and this is just enough left to put on a piece of gluten-free toast later. So that's fine. That works. Note to self, buy more butter. Moving on, we're going to tear this out again, and I'm going to add in my sugar. So the sugar was 300 grams as well. So equal weight sugar to flour ratio for this cookie dough. I'm just going to go slowly so that I don't have to take out anything at all ideally, but okay, that's 302 grams. I'm okay with that. So I'm going to scoop my scale out of the way for a minute. If you're using a hand mixer or a stand mixer, you would beat this all together on medium-high until it's creamed, and that should take you about a minute. I'll let you know how long it takes me doing it with just a fork. Okay, this is actually looking pretty good texture-wise, and that only took me about a minute and a half. So I guess the butter was just the right amount of softened, but that's definitely combined. So now we're going to move on. We're going to put our egg and vanilla extract, and now we're going to beat on high. Sorry, you can't see that I'm doing this. Beat on high until it's combined for a minute or so. Again, I'm doing this by hand. So I'll let you know how this goes. It's going to be a heck of an arm workout. But I think this is also kind of fun because, again, I'm trying to make sure that you can do this entire recipe without any sort of like extras, you know? So we're just looking for it to be fully combined. And if you are using a stand mixer or a hand mixer, you're going to have to stop at some point probably and scrape down your bowl to make sure that everything is properly incorporated. This is already smelling really, really nice. That is 100% completely combined, and it honestly only took me like a minute and a half. So, my arm might never recover, but we got it. We did it. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take our dry ingredients and we're going to combine them with our butter, sugar, etc. I'm going to do about half of it. Make sure that that's combined and then come in and do the rest. So again, if you're doing this with a mixer of some kind, you would want to do this on low and just until it's combined. So we're not trying to over mix here, but we want to make sure that it's like one cohesive texture when it's all said and done. So far so good. Let me go ahead and throw everything else in here. Yeah, this really is the easiest way to go. I know for some people this is like too much of a sensory experience for you, and that's valid. Do whatever you have to do. Maybe wear gloves or avoid this altogether and just stick to the fork or stick to the mixer, whatever you need to do. But that undoubtedly came together much faster than it would have if I just kept doing it with the fork the way that I was. This is a very thick, sticky dough, so I totally understand why it needs to chill before we bake it, otherwise it'll just spread and go everywhere. I'm gonna wash my hands one more time. We're gonna add in our sprinkles and our buttermilk or almond milk next. So there's 1 and 2. I'm sure everybody knows this trick by now, but in case you don't, if you don't want to buy, like let's say you aren't dairy free and you're planning to use actual milk or buttermilk in this, if you don't want to buy buttermilk just to use 2 tablespoons in this recipe, you can just take a little under 2 tablespoons of regular milk, like dairy milk, and put a little squirt of like lemon juice in there. Give it a couple minutes to kind of like sit and do its thing, and that will raise the pH, no, lower. It'll lower the pH, it'll acidify the milk enough so that chemically speaking in your recipe, it'll behave the same way as buttermilk would, and it'll give you that same flavor, that same tang. So now that our milk's in there, I'm going to put most of our sprinkles in here. I do want to reserve some for decorating later, so that feels good to me. Let's go ahead and mix all this together. I'm more interested in the milk coming into the dough than I am the Funfetti sprinkles because I can see the sprinkles. Might not be able to see the milk as well. So I want to make sure that that gets fully incorporated. That looks good. So this is a very thick dough. It's definitely not a batter, but it's wet. It's wet and sticky. If I tried to bring this out and try to like roll it into a ball, it probably would not get too far. However, they do want us to go ahead and scoop our cookie shapes right now and put the cookie balls into the fridge. So I guess that's what we're gonna do. My instinct as a baker tells me to just put the whole bowl of dough into the refrigerator and then scoop the cookies out later once it's had time to firm up. But I'm sure the recipe is written as it is for a reason, so we're gonna follow the recipe. I've got the pan here that I'm planning to use to bake. I'm gonna line it with some parchment paper. And so it says to scoop large sections of dough, so about 2 tablespoons of dough each, and roll them into balls. They're saying to just go ahead and put the balls onto like a plate to put in the fridge, but I don't know if I want to go through the trouble of making the dough balls and then having them touch on the plate. So I'm just going to go ahead and put them where I'm intending to bake them. So you do you have options. If you don't have room in your fridge for the entire pan, they don't have to go in the pan right now. This is just what I'm doing. So I don't know if this is actually 2 tablespoons of dough what I'm doing here, but this looks like a good amount for cookie. And I also don't know how much these are going to spread. So I'm gonna keep it to a dozen on this sheet, regardless of how many cookies I actually make. The chilling is gonna help slow down the cookies spreading, but I'm sure that they're still going to have a little bit of expansion when they bake. And it also looks like I'm going to have more than 12 cookies worth of dough here. Even though these are very, like, they're good sized cookies. I'm not making them small by any means. But it's looking like I might have enough for 14, 15, maybe even 16 cookies with this batch of dough. Okay, so I was able to get 15 cookies exactly out of this recipe. Now, if you have a ton of sprinkles left, you could have rolled each of these in sprinkles. You could just not do anything at all and leave them as they are. I do have some sprinkles left, so I'm just going to put some over the top while they're still nice and sticky. And some of them are going to fall off. That's fine. That's not a big deal. I'm just making sure each cookie gets a nice little smattering of sprinkles. Oh, I kind of ran out for the last couple, but again, no big deal because this step was entirely optional anyways. So now, these guys are all going to go into the fridge. At least 2 hours, although you can actually leave them in the fridge for up to 3 days. Make sure that you cover them with plastic wrap though if you're gonna leave them in for more than a couple hours. But once you're ready to bake, we're gonna preheat our oven to 350 Fahrenheit and we're gonna bake for 10 to 12 minutes. Then we're gonna let them sit on the baking sheet for 5 minutes so that they can keep cooling and cooking before we transfer them to a wire rack. So that's the plan. I'll meet you guys back here in a couple hours so we can get going. Alright Pallies, it's been a little over 2 hours. I basically waited for the 2 hours to elapse before I began the process of preheating my oven to 350. And so now that the oven is to temperature, I went ahead and I brought the cookie balls out, and as you can see they are, well, this one's kind of stuck to the plate. Let's come over here. See, they're nice and firm now. They're definitely holding their shape without any help. I'm gonna move these other guys from the plate onto another pan so that they can all bake up at the same time. And so the instructions say 10 to 12 minutes in the 350 degree oven. I am going to opt for the longer side of that. I'm going to do 12 minutes and I'm going to check on them after that. Remember that the 5 minutes of cooling time after, they continue to cook because of something called carryover. So just because they don't look done at the end of the 12 minutes doesn't mean that they're raw. However, sometimes that's exactly what it means. So use your judgment. I'm personally going to look for a golden brown rim and kind of a soft squishy middle, but not something that obviously looks completely raw. So as long as I achieve both those things, a mostly set middle and a golden rim on the outside, I'm going to feel comfortable removing them at 12 minutes. I'll let you know exactly how long it takes. For me anyways. Your mileage may vary. Okay, so I checked on them at the 12-minute mark and I wasn't super satisfied. So I've left them in for 15 minutes now. They spread a ton and they actually still feel way too soft. So I think I'm going to put these back in for another 3 minutes and see how that goes. The ones that I put in the smaller pan without the parchment paper don't seem to have spread as much. And they still, I think I'm going to give them another 3 minutes too, all the same. I was going to say you could try making your cookies a little smaller, but while I didn't measure the amount of dough I put into each cookie, I also was told by the recipe to do 2 tablespoons each, and I feel like I'm about there, if not just under. So no matter how you slice it, it's not enough time cooking for such big cookies. At least in my oven. Again, your mileage may vary, everybody's oven's a little different. But I've reset the timer for another 3 minutes, so far we're working with an 18-minute total cook time, unless of course I have to add more on at the end now. Okay, so at the 18-minute mark, this is what we're looking like. I can see now that it's getting golden, so I'm happy with that. The middle is not obviously raw, especially here in these, you can really see the golden edge around it. So I'm very happy with how these are turning out. See, they're still soft, but not like sinking straight through raw. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and turn off my oven. That's 18 minutes total cook time. I'm going to set a timer for 5 minutes to just let them cool. And I might give them a little longer than that, honestly, before I even try to move them. And we can either move them to a wire rack to finish cooling. You could leave them right here to finish cooling. It might take a little longer because the heat from the pan is going to kind of get in the way of the cooling process. But whenever they're cool enough to not burn your tongue, you can feel free to do a taste test, and that's exactly the moment I'm waiting for. Okay, so it's been 15 minutes of everybody cooling on just a wire rack. I don't know if you guys can see that. Definitely next time I make these, I will use 2 full cookie sheet pans because you can't compare the look of these to the look of these guys that were cooked separately, and like they have way more height, They have a better shape. So these were overcrowded, and you can tell. If you really want to, if the aesthetics are very important to you, and I could see how they could be if you're doing these for a holiday or an event, you could always use that glass trick that went viral a while ago, where you like put the cup over the cookie and just circle the cup until the cookie becomes circle shape. I don't really mind because for right now it's just me. So because these are so pretty and they're already separated from each other, I'm going to go ahead and use this one as my sample. Look at that, how nice that baked up. The inside looks perfect. The bottom is nice and crunchy, nice and golden. This is excellent. So now to taste, of course, the most important part. The outside is crispy and lovely. The inside is nice and fluffy, but still perfectly cooked through. Nice vanilla flavor to the cookie, a nice simple sugar cookie flavor with a little texture and extra sweetness from the sprinkles. This is amazing. Really, really good recipe. Provided you cook them in a way where they're all separated enough to cook up properly, this is definitely a 10 out of 10. Alright friends, there you have it. That's my cookie of the day. I really hope you enjoyed the recipe. I know my family definitely did. Before you go, please let me know what your favorite holiday cookie is. And keep your eyes peeled because maybe I'm making an allergy-friendly version of it this year. And if I'm not, I'll definitely keep it in mind for next year. I want to thank you all so much for being here and watching this video. I really hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, I hope you'll please give it a big thumbs up. I'd also love it if you would subscribe and click that notification bell because I post at least 3 times a week and I wouldn't want you to miss a minute. Thanks so much again for watching. Happy holidays!